Alright, welcome to the Relax app tutorial, everyone. To speed things up, I already have my sprites and the beginning of a button sprite. The goal of this button sprite is to make it look like it's being pressed down when someone clicks on it. So let's begin. As you can see, we have a costume called Up, but we're going to add some text by using the text tool and selecting our color. We can click on the button and then type our words. And when you're done typing, you can move the text by clicking off of the text, like so. But the next time you click off, it'll make the text permanent. Alright, so now we're going to duplicate this costume with our duplicate stamp. And then we're going to shrink this second costume so that it looks like it's being pressed down when we animate it. So up here we can grab our shrink tool, give it a couple of clicks, and notice that it's considerably smaller than the Up costume. So now we need to name this second costume Down. So now we're going to give this sprite some code so that it stays on one location on the stage. So move it to where you'd like it to be, and notice that the Go To block in the Motions category has been set to its current coordinates. See how when I move it, the coordinates are then updated? So anytime you move one of your sprites, you're going to want to grab the new go-to coordinates. So now we actually need to code this button so that it can do something for our game. So we're going to use an event. When this sprite is clicked, broadcast a message. And we already chose the message action. Now once it broadcasts the message action, we're going to want it to do something when it receives the message action. And in this case, we want it to hide. We also need to code the sprite so that it switches from one costume to the other when it's clicked. So from up to down. So with our scripts, we can use switch to costume when this sprite is clicked. And once it switches to the down costume, we want it to wait for a second before it switches back to the up costume. We can also choose half a second by putting in 0.50. And then we'll change this to up. Alright, and we'll also need to add, when the green flag is clicked, show, so that the button will appear. Alright, so let's try this out. Click the green flag, click the button, and action. The stage switches to the sprite's backdrop. So if we click on our stage, you can see that when it receives the message action, it switches to the sprite's backdrop. And by clicking on the backdrop tab, we can see that I have backdrops for all of my sprites. I'm just going to move this one up here so it's in order of how the game is played. Alright, so now we need to get our sprite icons to appear when we're on the sprite's backdrop. So let's code this to happen. Remember, the message is action. So when this sprite receives action, we want it to show. And we'll need this code in all of our sprites, so you can just drag it down to the other sprites and they will each have this block of code inside of them. Let's take a look. And you can double click the code to run just that block of code, like so. But they're a little bit messy. So now we'll use some go-to blocks to give them a specific spot on the stage. So drag your sprites to where you'd like them to go, and use the go-to block. Remember, the go-to block is updated every time you move the sprite. Now I noticed that this sprite icon is a little small, so I can use the grow tool, give it a couple of clicks, and there we go. Alright, so let's try this out. Press the green flag and notice they're in their right places, but they shouldn't be showing yet. So we'll just use a green flag hide, and just like before, we can drag this code into our sprites. Alright, so now let's try this again. Green flag, they hide. Click our start button, transition, and everyone's in their place. So now we actually need to code these sprites so that when someone clicks on them, we're transported to that relaxing place. So when this sprite is clicked, broadcast a new message. Keep it simple and name the message after your sprite. So we're going to choose new message, and we will call this one Ocean. Click OK when you're done. And once again, we're going to go Pro mode and drag this into the rest of our sprites, but we will need to change the message. So we can click in here on the drop arrow, choose New Message, and once again, name it after your sprite. So this is bird, drag this into my next sprite, and we'll name this one water. So what we're doing is creating an event for each time one of these sprites is clicked, and then we're going to code them to react accordingly. We're going to do this for all three sprites. So once the rain cloud is clicked and the message is broadcasted, it will then need to receive the message. And of course, we want all these sprites to hide when they're clicked because we're going to be going to a whole new scene. So when I receive water, hide. And all the sprites should hide when someone clicks on the rain cloud. Same thing for the bird. When someone clicks on the bird should hide. Or if they click on the water or the rain cloud, we would want the bird to hide. So as you can see, I'm going to add 3 when I receives because we have 3 messages. Those 3 messages will then tell our sprites to hide. So make sure you have all 3 receive and hide messages and all 3 of your sprites. And of course, you can use the duplicate stamp and just change the message. This is a quick way to get things done in Scratch. So now that you know how this works, I'm going to go ahead and speed up this part for you. Alright, so if we test this out, each sprite should hide when they're selected. Just hit the start button, rain cloud, hide, start button, bird, hide. Excellent. So now we're going to want the stage to switch to the backdrop that matches the sprite that was clicked. So since we already coded our stage to receive a message and switch its backdrop, we can just duplicate this code with the duplicate stamp. Now since there's 3 messages, we're going to need 3 of these blocks. Now just change the messages to match your sprites and change the backdrops to go with those sprites. Sky goes with bird. For my ocean message, I'll pick my beach backdrop. And for the water or the rain, I have my rain backdrop. So let's see this code in action. Green flag, start, click on the sprite, the message will be sent and received, and the backdrop will change. Try all 3 of your sprites to be sure that they're all working. Here you can see that the backdrop is indeed being changed. Click on the bird and the sky appears.
Are you ready, kids?
Alright, so let's get down to animation. Now, I've already created sprites for animating. I've got my rain for the rain cloud, my crab for the ocean, and I need a second sprite here for my bird. Now what you can do is duplicate your original sprites, your sprite icons, and use them for animating, but it duplicates all the code. So you're going to need to get rid of it like this. Of course, because these are animation sprites, we don't want them to be showing when we click the green flag. So you can leave that code there. And I'm going to name this bird animation so I don't get confused. So we want these 3 sprites here to animate when our sprite icons are clicked. But we don't want them to show when we press the green flag. So make sure you have green flag hide in all 3 of your animation sprites. So let's run this game and see where the animation sprite should come in. I click the start button and I choose one of my icons. Boom. And this is where my animation sprite should appear. So we're going to code it to appear exactly at this point. Notice when I click the ocean sprite, it broadcasts the message ocean. So my animation sprite is going to need to receive that message. When I receive ocean, it's time to animate. So I'm going to have them show, and that's the first step. To speed things up, you can copy this code into the rest of your animation sprites and just change the message. So when I receive water, the rain should show, and when I receive bird, the bird should show. So let's test this out. There you go. I click the ocean and he appears. Now this is a good time to place your sprites where you want them on your stage. Once you move them, you can use the Go To block to designate that spot on the stage for their new location. Test each of your sprites. So if I click the bird, I'm going to want to move this bird to its new location on the stage. Now I notice that this background kind of blends in with the bird, so I'm going to go ahead and change the backdrop right now. There we go, that's better. And I'm going to enlarge them with the Grow tool. Like I said before, this is a good time to adjust your sprites. And I'll also check my rain cloud. When I click the rain cloud, the rain sprite appears. I'm going to go ahead and adjust this location and add the Go To block once I've moved my sprite. And now the rain has a new location on the stage. There you go. And once again, I noticed that my animation sprite kind of blends in with the backdrop. So I'll go ahead and adjust that right now as well. So now that everything's in place and it's working, let's animate these sprites. We'll start with the bird because the bird has 2 costumes built into him. In order to animate, you're going to need at least 2 costumes. 3 is better, but 2 will work. And our code is basically going to tell Scratch to switch back and forth between these 2 costumes. So we'll go to Looks and use the Next Costume block. Now we're going to want this repeated over and over again, and if you remember, that's an example of a loop. We'll use the forever loop, and we want this to happen when it receives the bird message. We can test this code by double-clicking this block here. And there you go. It's definitely working, but it's working way too fast. So we can adjust that with the wait block. This is in our controls. Now by default, it waits 1 second, which you can see is too slow. So we're going to cut that down to 1/4, which is 0.25. And now we're flying. Alright, now here's an advanced trick. I'm going to create 2 cloud sprites and have them pass through the stage like this. And then I'll have that animation loop itself. This is an advanced trick. If you'd like to try it, feel free. If not, no worries. Alright, so when this animation starts, we're going to want these clouds to travel from one side of the stage to the other. So you're going to need to remember that the stage is broken up by a y-axis and an x-axis. The x runs horizontal, the y runs vertical. And as you can see, the width of the stage is measured by 240 pixels and the height is 180 pixels. We'll use this to create our animation. So when the clouds receive the bird message, we're going to tell them to go to the right side of the stage. Since the stage width is 240, we're going to tell it to go all the way to 400 pixels because we want it to go off the stage. As for the y-axis, that's how high or low the sprite is on your stage. So I moved my cloud to where I want it, and I'll look over here on the right and see that it's at -89 on the y-axis. So this code is going to put my cloud way over here on the right, and we want it to travel to the left over here. So we're going to use a glide to block. So on the x-axis, we want it to go past the edge of the stage, so -400. And again, the y-axis is going to stay the same, so that will also be -89. Now I want to tell the cloud how long I want it to take to glide across the stage. So I'm going to choose 3 seconds. Now I'm going to want it to bounce back to the right side of the stage when it's done. Don't forget to have it show when it first receives the message and hide when it reaches the edge of the stage. So I want this to repeat over and over again, so I'll use the forever loop once again, and you can double click the block to run this script. And there it goes. As you can see, it's getting stuck on the left side of the stage, so maybe -400 is too far. You may need to adjust your numbers depending on what kind of animation you have and how big your sprite is. So I'll try a few different numbers here and just let the code keep running until I see something that I like. Alright, now that that's working, I'm going to put this code in my other cloud sprite. Just drag it over here, and I'll adjust my numbers. Now the x-axis is already correct, but the height needs to change. So if I look at the y-axis, it's currently at 71. Now this is a cool effect if you want to make it look like your bird is rising. The y-axis started at 71 and went to negative 81. So it looked like the cloud was going in a downward motion. You just need both y-axes to be the same value, and voila, here you go. The bird is flying. Now here's a pretty cool advanced trick. I want the bird to look like it's flying in front of one of my clouds. So I'm going to use something called go back X amount of layers. I can place this in my loop so that the cloud always goes to the back of the stage, and that way the bird is in front of this one cloud. I'll just put that in my forever loop and check this out. There you go. It gives it a cool depth of field perception. Alright, and remember to name all of your new sprites as well as add the green flag clicked hide code to your new sprites to make sure that they hide when you start your program. Alright, so now let's code our rain cloud. So we're going to use the same technique we used for the clouds on our bird, only we're going to use it vertically here for our rain. So what we want is this rain sprite to start at the top of the stage, which is going to be y200, and travel down to the bottom of the stage, negative y200. So we'll set our code. So again, we'll go to the motions blocks and use the glide to block. We're going to glide in 3 seconds to negative y200, and then have the sprite hide. And you'll want it to repeat these steps over and over again. So we're going to use the forever loop. So we can put this together, double click it to test it out, and it glides 3 seconds to the bottom of the stage, hides, and then the code starts over again, going to 0x and positive 200y. Alright, so we can make this look a little more full and continuous by adding a clone. So we're going to duplicate this rain sprite, see how it's named animation 2, and we're going to use the same code but modify it slightly so that one sprite falls and then the second sprite starts falling, and they'll just kind of work like a conveyor belt, cycling over each other over and over again. So what we can do to offset the timing here is use the wait 1 second block. And we'll just modify the amount of wait that we use from 1 second to 1.5 seconds. So let's test out this code, and we should see the first sprite starts to fall, and then 1.5 seconds later the second sprite starts. And there we have a nice full rainstorm. And there's one more thing we can do to create kind of a cool effect. We're going to create a new sprite called the puddle. Alright, now place your puddle where you want it on the stage, and once you place it, you're going to need to add that common block of code that we've been using when green flag clicked hide, and you also need to tell it that when it receives the correct message to show. And go ahead and add a go to front block. That way we make sure it's in front of the rain. Now we'll use the costumes to create our simple animation technique. Using the duplicate stamp, we create a second costume. We'll add some splashes, and then we can go ahead and code our costumes to continuously switch to the next costume, therefore creating an animation. And we'll go ahead and add a third costume. So this is a 3-frame animation, 3 costume animation. Alright, and here's that block of animation code we've been using for all of our sprites. When I receive message, forever go to next costume. And of course we have a wait, a quarter of a second there. And you see the puddle is going to transition through its 3 costumes, creating an animation effect. And there you have it. Alright, last but not least, we can animate our ocean sounds. So we're going to start with the crab. As you can see, he has 2 different costumes, but only his claws are moving. So we're going to modify his legs with the eraser tool, and then we'll use our animation code so that these 2 costumes will flash back and forth, making it look like our crab is animated. Alright, so here you see the same animation blocks we've been using for all of our sprites. And as you can see, if we double click this code, he indeed is animated. But what we're going to do is have him go back and forth across the stage. So we can use our motion blocks for this code. So we'll start with the ocean event, and this is going to be a forever loop. And if we go to our motions, move 10 steps, and you'll see our crab move across the stage. The problem is the crab hits the edge of the stage and gets stuck there. So we add this if on edge bounce. But then he flips upside down. So if you go to the info here, you can click this only face left and right option, and problem solved. You can slow him down by changing 10 steps to 5 steps, 2 steps. It's all up to you. Whatever value you like for your animation is up to you. Alright, now that our crab is happily animated across the sand, the next thing we're going to do is add another 3 costume animation. This time we're going to use it for the ocean waves right here on the shore edge. So this again will be a 3 costume animation, and we'll do this by creating new sprites. So let's go. Okay, so what I've done here is actually create 4 costumes: splash 1, 2, 3, and then no splash. Now we're going to code this kind of interestingly. It's going to start with splash 1, and then go to splash 2, which is a big splash, and then splash 1 where it shrinks back down, and splash 3 to where it's practically gone, and then no splash. And notice there's a little quarter of a second delay between each costume. Now I'll run this at real time so you can see the way it looks. Alright, so one last look at all of these sprites and their effects, and you'll see that everything is working nicely. So I guess it's time to work on sounds. Alright, so now that we have our animations working, it's time to import our sounds. So what we're going to want to do is put our sounds directly onto the sprite of our choice. Now, since we have sprite icons that we can click on to listen to a sound, it'd be good to put the sound in those icons. So, starting with the ocean, click on my ocean sprite, click the sounds tab, and I'm going to import my sound. So you can see there's 3 buttons to import here, and I'm going to show you what those are. It's choose the sound from a library, record a new sound directly into your computer, or just upload one of your sounds from your computer. So that's what we're going to do, since everyone already recorded their own sounds. Just in case you didn't, you can always record directly to the computer using the microphone here. Okay, so let's import our sounds. This is the ocean. Alright, so here is the sound imported. And as you can see, you have controls to play the sound down here. You can even add effects, fade it in, fade it out, make it softer, play it backwards. So you can do a lot of cool things. I'm going to get rid of this pop sound. And I'd like to rename this too. Ocean. Okay, now that it's named Ocean, that's a little more simple. Alright, so now let's code this sound into our sprite. So we go to our scripts, and basically, when the animation starts, we want the sound to play. So we need to go back and look at when does the animation start for the ocean. If I go to the crab, it says when I receive ocean, the animation begins. So we can use that same code for our sounds. When I receive ocean, play sound, and we're going to say play sound until done. Now this will play once and then it'll stop. So if you want it to continue, use a forever block. The reason we need the play sound until done versus the play sound, if we put play sound in the forever loop, it'll just keep starting the song over and over again before it ever finishes. It'll sound like a broken record. Alright, so now that this is here, let's test it out. Choose the ocean. And now you can listen to some relaxing sounds while also viewing a nice little animation. So you're going to repeat this process for the rest of your sounds. Again, I'll just review that quickly. It's going to the sprite icon and going to the sounds tab, importing a sound file from the folder, and then coding that sound into that same sprite icon. I hope you guys enjoyed this project, and I wish you the best of luck.